Fantastic. All right. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Alex Kurtz. I'm a faculty member in the Maryland Fulton Teachers College here at Arizona State University. This is our third cohort of the Future Educators for Inclusion Virtual Exchange. It's a unique opportunity. We're really excited to have you part of it. Today, we're kind of setting the stage for the next 5 weeks. It's a very compressed time frame. So within a little bit over a month, we're getting to know each other, various cultures, and how we include individuals with disabilities in those respective cultures. As you already know, we have students, future teachers from Morocco and various parts of the United States, Mississippi, Kentucky, and Arizona. In addition, all of us will get to know various locations aside from Morocco and the US, mostly Germany. And I'll talk more about why Germany and what we are learning from that particular country shortly. All of you have learned about FEFI from a faculty member at your institute. And I would like for everybody to just briefly introduce themselves and shortly mention what their connection is to the topic. In my case, I was born and raised in Germany, and I worked as a paraprofessional. Some people call it a teacher's aide when I was around 19. And that was a school for individuals with disabilities. And that really got me interested in the topic, working with individuals with disabilities. I subsequently became a special ed teacher, and I taught in various locations across the US, Tennessee, California, and I also worked as a behavior analyst for some time. And now I'm a researcher focused on special ed and primarily professional development and instructional coaching. But I'm excited to work with you over the next 5 weeks, and I want to toss it over to our members here at ASU. Tanya, you want to say hi and then just suggest the next person to introduce themselves?
Sure. Hello, I'm Tanya Pinkerton. I'm a clinical associate professor at the Teachers College, and all of my work is focused on inclusive education. So welcome, glad to see you today, and I will hand it over to Ian.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Ian. I am Arizona State University's student worker for this program. I'll be doing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff and helping make sure the Zoom meeting is going as planned. You'll be getting a lot of emails from me over the next few weeks. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. And I'll pass it over to Wendy.
Thank you, Ian. I am Wendy Oakes. I am a professor in the Teachers College here at Arizona State University. And my background is in as a teacher of special education. So working with children, very young children from the ages of 5 all the way through middle school. So for us, that's about age 15, students with disabilities. So I will pass it over to Nicole.
Hi, my name is Nicole Haggerty, and I am a clinical professor at Arizona State University. And I am very excited to be a part of this program again. And my main focus is teaching teachers to become special ed teachers. So, and I'll turn it over to Christina.
Hi, my name's Christina Knoll, and I'm from Western Kentucky University, and I'm a professor of special education. Right now, I'm taking an interim role. We have a clinical education complex on our campus where we offer supports and services to little kids. So Wendy, you would love it. 2-year-olds to 5-year-olds, all the way up to, we have a college program for autistic college students, and then literally everything in between. So I'm deeply passionate about this population, excited to do this, and I will pass it to Erin Caulfield.
Hi, I'm Erin. I am at Western Kentucky University. This is my first year here. I am in our College of Teacher Ed, primarily working in elementary education in social studies methods and diversity and differentiation as a part of our core program for all of our education majors from elementary to music to high school. And I will pass it to Rodney.
Hello, I am Rodney Hurt, and I work at the University of Mississippi. I work with our special education students as well as our elementary education pre-service teachers. I have a kind of my background. I've worked with young kiddos all the way up to adults with disabilities. So I feel like this is some important work, and I very much enjoyed the first year. I'm looking forward to this year. And I don't know who to pass it to. I'm very sorry, Alex.
No problem. Khadija, do you want to get started with our facilitators in Morocco?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Okay, so, well, good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Since here is the evening in Morocco, and I think it's noon there in America, and also in Germany, I think it's the evening. It's like in Morocco. All right, so my name is Khadija Karit. I'm teacher trainer at the CRMF Marrakesh in Morocco. Marrakesh is one of the, let's say, the city in Morocco that is in the middle. If we can say it's in the middle, neither in the north nor in the north nor in the south. This is my third participation in the FEFI project. My interest in inclusive education stems from the fact that I'm a teacher trainer and I'm supposed to introduce my teacher trainees into a variety of ways of how to deal with students with different needs. So as a teacher trainer, I find it always challenging how to deal with students who have special needs. So during the previous two cohort, we had really an kind of interesting sessions, knowing through the sharing and through the exchange with each other to know how to deal and how to respond to people with different needs. And I'm sure that this cohort also will bring a lot of interesting things, both for the trainees who are really merely concerned and they are in direct contact with the students in the classes, and also for us, I think, as kind of coordinators and teacher educators.
Great, thank you, Khadija.
Welcome.
I am Ali Hamdi from CRMF of Dakhla in the extreme south of Morocco. So I am a teacher trainer in this teacher training college. I have the pleasure now serving as a facilitator of this program for the third cohort so far. I am supervising now about 26 passionate teachers, mainly from the southern regions of Morocco, who are participating in this exchange and who are ready to embark in this experience and learn and exchange and benefit from this program, mainly enlarging their network and learning new practices, inclusive practices, learning from US inclusive experience and Germany's heritage in this perspective. I am grateful and excited again to be part of this rewarding program, and I take this opportunity to extend my immense gratitude to our incredible colleagues in the USA and our dedicated team of facilitators here in Morocco. Thank you, everyone. And over to you, Si Mohammed from Laayoune, if you are there.
Yes, thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mohammed Lajaf. I'm based in Laayoune, in the south of Morocco. I am a teacher trainer. I train both teachers and teacher administrators. The need for joining this program is clear and obvious. I think this is my first time joining this program, but I have already organized a joint webinar with Tanya, benefiting our teachers and school administrators on how to design their school improvement plans in their own schools. So I think the takeaway from this program is going to be important in terms of the the positive effect that program will have on my trainees, especially school administrators who are going to design school improvement plans. We call it here in Morocco school projects. And the notion of inclusiveness is very important because students with special needs should contribute to the success of their own, of the school programs in their own schools. And I am very delighted to be part of this program and to represent CEREMF Lyon and ready for the journey. Thank you.
Great.
Jamal, I know I saw
Sorry,
you earlier.
Yes.
I'll
Hi,
hand it over
hi,
to
everybody. I was going to pass it over to myself. Anyway, hi, everybody. My name is Jamal Slimani. I am a teacher trainer at the Teachers College here in Rabat, the capital of Morocco. My interest in this wonderful project comes simply from two things. The fact that I did both my master's thesis on disability. There was communication between able-bodied people and people with disabilities, and then my doctoral thesis was also on disability. It was on alternative and augmentative communication, and I get a lot of pleasure knowing that the participants that we recruit learn a lot, particularly about inclusive education, which, by the way, is receiving a big importance in the macro program of the Ministry of Education. So they're going to put more and more focus on inclusive education, so that everybody is treated equally in all the public schools. Thank you. I don't know who to pass it over. Maybe to Kaltuma. I don't know if she's having any problems.
Yes, thank you, Jamal. Good to see you again. And Keltuma is having some audio issues, so I will introduce.
Could you hear me?
Oh, there you are, Keltuma. Yes, you want to introduce yourself?
Okay. Hello, Tanya. Hello, Chris. Hello, everybody. So I'm glad to be here again with you. Of course, the sound is cutting and it's getting interrupted very frequently. I don't know if it's from my side or on anybody else's side. I think it's from my side. So I am Kaltuma Gouche. I am a teacher trainer at the CEREMF Oujda, the Région de l'Oriental. And of course, this is the third time I am participating in this program. Each time I learn something new, not just something, but a lot of new things. And I am glad that many of my, former teacher trainees were willing to join this cohort. Of course, by the way, you should know, you already know, I guess you already know that we don't have teacher trainees yet in our CEREMFs all over Morocco. We are still recruiting new trainees. So we are working with last year's group, okay? So of course, inclusive education is now having a large place in the Moroccan discussions all over the country, in many places at the parliament, in the ministry level and everywhere. So we are glad that we are contributing with our bits of thought, of practice, and of training in this field. So thank you.
Fantastic. All right. Well, it is great to see everybody from the US and Morocco again. We are eager to get you into breakout rooms, but prior to that, there are just a few logistics that I need to cover. Yeah, Tanya, go ahead.
Alex, I just wanted to say welcome to Mr. Obat and Mr. Sawi, who are coordinators from a couple of our CRMFs who are here in attendance too. So thank you to the leaders for coming and supporting our project.
That is much appreciated. Thank you.
I would also like to, I forgot my facilitator in Lyon, Sidi Lishgil, who has been doing a great job. Thank you, Sidi.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. Well, you can see, everybody, we have a packed agenda. Our goal each time for each of the 5 times we get together is to have a lot of discussion amongst the various participants Yes, we are providing content, but the main focus is for you to discuss the content amongst each other and bring in different cultural perspective related to what we're covering. In terms of our exchange, this is an exchange sponsored by the U.S. Department of State. The Stevens Initiative has been in place for over 20 years, fostering virtual exchanges following Ambassador Stevens, who actually was stationed in Morocco for quite some time, and he saw the value of cultural exchanges and then subsequently founded the Stevens Initiative and received sponsorship from the U.S. Department. So yes, we are a U.S. Department of State Department grant, and you will frequently see these logos here on a lot of our communication, on our certificates of completion, etc. The topic, the content that we'll be covering on the next 5 weeks is broadly related to disability inclusion. We will be covering inclusionary practices. In the US, we call them high leverage practices. But the focus, as I mentioned before, is really around the different cultural perspectives you bring to the table. And for this to be meaningful, the key aspect is for you to ask lots and lots of questions, and particularly as you are engaging with each other in breakout rooms. Just earlier, you probably heard several terms that are unfamiliar to you. You might not be familiar with the term inclusion. You might not be familiar with some of the terms our Moroccan colleagues brought up. CRMF, what is that? How does teacher preparation work in that country? These are all important questions that you should bring to your fellow students in the breakout rooms. As I mentioned before, we'll be meeting for 5 weeks. Today is our first of 5 sessions. In the presentation, we'll provide you a link to our website, a lot of information, materials, and postings from our previous cohorts can be accessed on the website. We will also start a LinkedIn group, which should allow us to form a professional network of future educators from around the world. So we'll invite you to that. We'll have an alumni group, and I'll share those links before this session today is over. All our Moroccan colleagues are well-versed in English. However, for them, it is also, of course, practice of their language competencies. But for all of us, we are trying to increase our content expertise and cultural awareness. In terms of numbers, if you see how many people we have around 120 participants. We always aim for that number or slightly higher. So if you know somebody that still can join or is interested, we'd love for them to still come. You can miss one of the 5 sessions in order to still receive your certificate of completion. Also, if you need to miss a session, your coordinator is the primary point of contact to communicate that to, because you may still be contributing to some of the work tasks we're having. There's 2 presentations. I'll talk about that in a second. So if you are contributing to those, we'll find ways to honor your contributions. The 2 projects that we'll be doing, the first one is called Compare and Contrast, which is actually happening already at the next session. The next session will be focused on a school for individuals with disabilities in Germany. So that means for both the US and Moroccan participants, that's going to be a brand new experience. And we'll have a teacher from that school showcase, I would say, the day in the life of a student at that institution. The students there have prepared for us a little tour that runs you through an entire day. And then subsequently, Mr. Winhoff, the German teacher there, will provide some more context to how disability inclusion is done in Germany, because that school would represent a more restrictive environment where only students with disabilities are in one setting. They also have inclusion similar to the US. So he'll speak to that, and you have an opportunity to ask him questions and subsequently prepare a simple compare and contrast slide deck comparing what you saw in Germany to your own country, and then discussing that with your fellow exchange students. And at the very end of the project, and I apologize, my sometimes freezes. All right, I hope my camera is back up. It sometimes freezes. The next project, the local inclusion project, is, we call it a storyboard. It's Google Slides with pictures, sometimes videos, where you showcase an example of disability inclusion in your community. As we move closer to the project, I'll show you some examples, but if you're curious, if you go to the FEFI website, there are numerous examples of those local inclusion projects. Some of them could be done on campus, visiting maybe an office that universities has for including students with disabilities. Others do site visits to different types of settings where individuals with disabilities are educated. And so that will be covered at the end of our 5-week project. And I should say, if those two projects are completed, you receive a certificate of completion. Let me show you that real quick. So all of you, if all goes well, will get a certificate of completion like that. You can add it to your CV. And as I mentioned before, in order to receive the certificate of completion, please make sure you're present for all 5 sessions. You can miss one, but communicate that with your facilitator to make sure we keep track of that. Here are the locations that are part of the exchange. And here's a quick link. I'm not sure if it's going to work. My connection is a bit slow today. We were hoping to show you some of the locations where we're at. As most of you should know, Morocco is located in the continent of Africa, south of Spain. Here are the locations we're going to visit. Let me move on to our next location. Trying to see if that moves. Resume. Next one would be Germany. Next week we'll be in Germany, visiting a school for individuals with disabilities. And then for our Moroccan friends, we'll be joined by students from the University of Mississippi, located in the southern United States. Students from Kentucky. Seems to be moving slow. Not sure if it wants us to move. There you go. Further up north. And of course, Arizona, which is the southwest of the United States. Several faculty members here have actually been to Morocco, and certain parts of Morocco are very similar to Arizona, both in terms of temperature and just the landscape in general. Oops. I already covered some of the requirements for the certificate of completion. Thank you again for already adding your first and last name to your Zoom and having your camera on whenever possible, especially when we get into breakout rooms. Getting the visual cues is really helpful for our discussion. So if possible, always have your camera on. We will certainly do that on our end. Here you can see the curriculum that we have for the next 5 weeks. Today, we're gonna, after the overview, meet up in breakout rooms and briefly cover the continuum that moves from access to inclusion. Next week, we're going to visit a virtual school tour in Germany. Then we'll look at our compare and contrast presentations in session 3. Learn about best practices for disability inclusion in session 4, and begin our presentations in session 5, and then our graduation ceremony at the very end. In terms of the 2 projects, I really want to just focus on the local inclusion projects. This is something that should be fun and should be something that you can easily do locally without significant investment of your time, by showcasing either a inclusive practice or setting in your community. Our respective countries, the US and Morocco, are in different spaces when it comes to this continuum from access to inclusion. So we'll get to see some vastly different ways of including individuals with disabilities. And at times, it's easy for you to get access to a particular setting. Other times, it may not. And so you will be working with your facilitator, and your facilitator will be reaching out around options that are available to you. You will be in groups, so it can be completed fairly easily in a collaborative fashion. And when it comes to either focusing on a practice or a setting, you have the option to merely observe, or we had examples throughout the last cohorts where engagement is also possible. So you may be in a library reading to students with disabilities, or participating in a classroom enacting a certain practice, all of which is okay. So either the observation or engagement part works. And you can focus either on a practice discussed here or on a particular setting.
Terrific. Welcome back. I think all the breakout rooms are closed now, so we'll turn it back over to Alex.
Great. Okay, wonderful. Well, I hope you had a good discussion. We certainly did. And we are already excited about some forthcoming events. We even talked about, seeing the school in Germany next week, and kind of being excited how that is something new for all of us. I'm going to share my screen to get back to the presentation. Got a couple more minutes. And then, of course, I'll give you an opportunity to ask any questions you may have. This is something that we have adopted in the United States. So to our friends and colleagues in Morocco, you will often hear us use what's called person-first language, meaning we are trying to lead with the individual, the person, and then subsequently introduce their respective disability. And so instead of calling a individual an autistic person, we might call them an individual with autism, or a student with a learning disability, as opposed to a learning disabled student. And that is something that as a culture we have adopted. And so we try to clarify why you may hear us kind of phrase things in a particular way. And that's because of our focus on putting the person first. Already in our group, and I'm sure in your group as well, certain terminology was mentioned. In the US, terms like inclusion or full inclusion is a term that we frequently use. And what we try to lay out here on this slide is that countries that are intending to integrate individuals with disabilities in all aspects of education tend to move along a continuum that begins with access and moves all the way to inclusion. And we try to define this a little bit, in particular, because we know in Morocco, things are done differently. And so we're trying to place these two terms, access and inclusion, along this framework. So the first one, all the way to the left, is around physical access. This is something that when we were in Morocco, we've seen. In the US, you see it a lot. All public buildings by law have to be physically accessible. So if you think about being an individual who cannot see, a blind person, or if you're an individual that has to use a wheelchair, having a ramp available allows you to get, for example, into the library. Having an elevator available allows you to go from the ground floor to higher floors. And that is a requirement. So if you have a public building, you need to make it physically accessible. When it comes to education, the next step would be to also ensure that there is instructional access. So this would allow individuals with disabilities to engage in the materials provided. So an individual that cannot see or is visually impaired, not providing anything regarding a book or visual text, they can't access it. And so providing Braille, for example, or if you're hard of hearing, providing amplification for hearing, all are means to provide you with instructional access so you can engage in the materials and activities. As we move to this term inclusion, there's things called partial and full inclusion, and they relate both to changes in the instructional setting, but also the instruction itself to allow full participation in all aspects of learning. And so participation is a next level up. Not only do we allow a student or an individual with a disability to engage, but they also can participate, share, provide, contribute. And if it's partial, we tend to call this, because there are only limited amounts of time. They may only participate in certain classes or for certain aspects of a lesson. And full inclusion would allow an individual with disability to participate in the instruction in all instructional settings, just like their general education peers. There's really no separation in that sense. There may be accommodations, slight changes to the instruction that allow them the access and full inclusion, but overall, you would see that they spend all of their time in classes with students without disabilities, and we would frame that as full inclusion. Next week, you're going to see a school in Germany, and we talked a little bit about this in our group, that even in the United States, we used to have schools that are exclusively for individuals with disabilities. They're not many of those left in the US, but in Europe and in particular in Germany, there are actually quite a few schools left that are exclusively dedicated to the education of students with disabilities. They also have partial and full inclusion models where students with disabilities are in the same schools as everybody else. And Mr. Winhoff, our special education teacher who will guide us next week, will explain that to you and provide various options. Again, because the example he's showing you is from a more restricted school setting where there are only students with disabilities. All right, I want to pause here for a second before I'll let Wendy cover a few additional pieces. Are there any questions related to this continuum, which we'll be exploring over the next couple of weeks? And you could put your question in the chat. Or unmute. If this sounds clear and your discussion has already covered that, then fantastic. The last piece I want to bring up, and it's something that our facilitator brought up in our group, is that we don't want to create a hierarchy of more is better, or positioning the US as the example that everybody needs to follow. So more is not necessarily better. Even in the United States, we are focused on the least restrictive, the least separated, if you will, but most appropriate way to educate individuals with disabilities. So sometimes it can be more appropriate to be in a classroom that is more modified than to be in the general education classroom and just color pictures. That's not the intent. So again, least restrictive and most appropriate. In terms of framing this from a more international perspective, Wendy has a few pieces to talk about with regard to the United Nations Charter around disability inclusion and their sustainability goals. So I'm going to briefly provide that perspective and then close for the day.
Yeah. So because this is a virtual exchange across various contexts, it really gives us an opportunity to think about how we as individuals can help advance these sustainable development goals set out by the United Nations. If you look at number 4, it's around quality education. And that's really where, you know, the work for those of us as teachers, working with all students, creating inclusive spaces that are welcoming to all students. That's where our work really sits. And when we're talking about the number worldwide of students that we want to serve, we have about 24 million students that have identified disabilities, and only about half of those students are served in schools. And so we really want to think, as this new generation, you all are moving into schools as school leaders and as educators, really thinking about what you individually could do to create shift towards those goals. So on the next slide, you clicked on the goals. That's awesome. Yeah, and you can go, as Alex was kind of modeling there, but you can click on that slide and it'll take you to the goals if you want to read more specifically about what they say. And then this is really about the United Nations convening on the rights of persons with disabilities, and just making sure that if you are a member of a community, that that you can live among that community, that you can flourish, that you can contribute in productive ways, and that there are options for you to be part of the school community. And so really this is just that global priority around that work. And then on the last slide, and this really is connected to what Alex was just talking about and just sharing on that continuum of access to inclusion, and thinking about it in terms of these buckets. So some of the basic things, right, are making sure that all students have the ability to get to and from school, right? They have to be able to show up first to be able to engage in the learning that you will provide as educators. And then how do we create the learning environments from the beginning? How do we think about learning environments where all students in that community can participate? How do we think about curriculum that's accessible and that maybe has some specially designed instruction for meeting the variation of learners in your classrooms? How do we assess? So we're not using the same metric or the same measure to assess learning of all kids, but how do we have flexible assessment systems that allow us to apply principles of universal design for learning and other ways of making sure that we are able to measure student progress? And then how do we work within our communities to think about policies, shifting the beliefs of others through the work that we do and the advocacy work as educators to really create this comprehensive shift for including all students in educational spaces? Because education, going back to the SDGs, right? Education is one way that we can achieve that flourishing global society that is the goal of the United Nations and all of the countries that are members. All right. Thanks, Alex.
All right. Tanya, we just have these last 2 action items, a link to our website, and then I think a nifty QR code that should allow folks to join the LinkedIn group. And I think, Tanya, if you want to look at your chat, there is a link directly in there. Let's see if I can.
Yeah,
there
for the LinkedIn group.
So the link to our website is right here. You can check out the various options here. Here are 5 sessions. Questions around Zoom, you can look at this. And most importantly, the various presentations that we've done in the past are available. So if you let's want to click on cohort number 2, there are some options of various projects, in particular the local inclusion project I mentioned. So you can already take a look at that.
Somebody did ask in the chat about attendance, and
Yes.
it looks like a number of people gave it the thumbs up. So also maybe curious about that. I don't know if you want to mention something about attendance.
Yeah, we have 5 sessions. It's
But just about how they are accounted for, maybe, right? Or
Yeah.
the person that posted that, if you want to unmute and ask the question, would be awesome.
Sure, if there's something specific.
I was just asking if we had to like fill out a form or if just being on the Zoom is like counts for attendance.
We use Zoom to track all of our attendance, but it's really important that everybody have their name, be their full first and last name. Otherwise, we don't know. I know sometimes Zoom does funny things, like if you log in with your iPhone, it'll just call you iPhone. So please make sure that your name is your full first and last name. And if you're having trouble with that, you can always direct message Ian or me, and we will be happy to help you fix it.
Can I add to that, Tanya? I know some of my folks had mentioned they were going to do this together. So if you were with somebody else, which is not ideal, but I know a couple of our folks are between classes, be sure and let me know, because we're not going to know if you were there, and we can talk about that if we have to.
Yeah, great point, Rodney. You can always connect with your facilitator too if there's an extenuating circumstance like that, and then we'll update our attendance accordingly.
Yeah, I think that's the most important piece, folks. If you have an unforeseen circumstance, talk to your facilitators about that. So we had occasions, as Rodney mentioned, where 2 or 3 people were on one connection. Well, we can't track that well with Zoom. So you gotta let your facilitator know, who will then let us know, or contact us directly. Ian is more than happy to like account for that, especially if in terms of the projects, you have to miss more than one session. We really need to know how you're contributing to the various projects to make sure you get your certificate and that line on your resume, which I know is important for all of you. All right.
One last note, we'll put all the links from today's chat in the LinkedIn group, so definitely suggest you sign up. So if you want to go back and look at any of those that we shared today, they'll be available for you.
And I'm looking at time. Tanya, correct me, but we have a couple more minutes left, right? So if you want to use that to sign up on LinkedIn, I don't even know if you're already on LinkedIn. That'd be great. And then for next week, please be on time. It will be later in the evening, I believe, for Germany. So our colleague and special ed teacher, Mr. Winhoff, will be ready to go right at the designated time. And so we don't have a lot of leeway in terms of starting 5 minutes late. So please be on time, sign in with your name, and it should be a fun excursion. And thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, we'll stay on for a couple more minutes. Always reach out to your facilitators or contact Ian or one of us directly. Thanks again for the discussion. We'll be here for a couple more minutes. Enjoy the rest of the day or the rest of your evening, and we'll be seeing you next week to visit Germany. Thank you.